we're putting on our maester's chains because we've got a massive, honestly mind-blowing fan theory to investigate. We're looking at the very real possibility that the familiar world of ice and fire isn't just your standard fantasy realm stuck in the Middle Ages. What if it's actually a post-apocalyptic wasteland, still recovering from a global cataclysm? Let's get into it. Here's our roadmap for the explainer today. We're going to start by looking at a medieval illusion. Then we'll check out some impossible ancient structures, dive into the mystery of the oily black stone, uncover the great empire of the dawn, and finally piece together this whole post-apocalyptic world theory. All right, so let's kick things off with a simple yet totally mind-bending question about the true nature of Planetos. When we read the books or dig into the lore, we just kind of assume humanity is slowly marching forward, right? But what if they aren't? What if the people we're following are actually the survivors of a highly advanced civilization that was completely wiped off the map? It sounds crazy, but let's start by looking at the stagnation of their society. Section 1. A medieval illusion, stagnant technology. What's really fascinating here is the glaring, undeniable contrast between a civilization that seems permanently stuck in the Middle Ages and the absolute logic-defying engineering feats of its ancient past. I mean, think about it. The society of Westeros has been completely stagnant for 8,000 years, 8 millennia. They're still using early medieval Bronze and Iron Age tools. But standing literally right in front of them are these 700-foot ice walls, castles by the sea with perfectly smooth stones, and the lost magical fused stone of Illyria. There is a massive disconnect here. When you actually stop and look closer at these structures, the lore straight up tells us that places like Storm's End are architectural miracles. Storm's End has these massive, perfectly fitting, smooth stones that have entirely resisted degradation from the ocean for thousands of years. Then you have Winterfell, which is just immense and sits on top of this incredibly complex system of subterranean tunnels. And of course, the Wall, a 700-foot-tall, continent-spanning structure made entirely of ice. Fans rightly point out that these structures are completely beyond the current society's capabilities to build or even to maintain, honestly, which begs a rather massive question. Section 2. Impossible ancient structures built by the first men. So according to the accepted histories we're given, it was the first men who constructed these wonders. But here is the massive logical gap, the elephant in the room. The first men had absolutely no written language when they supposedly built the Wall and Storm's End. Think about that for a second. How does a society lacking complex math, possessing no blueprints, and without a written language manage to build castles that quite literally defy physics? There's a great quote from the source material that hits the nail on the head regarding this logical gap. A culture that has no written language is not capable of such feats of engineering. You can't wing it when it comes to building something like that. And it's true, you need written plans, you need advanced mathematics. This strongly suggests that these structures were actually built by a pre-existing, far more advanced civilization, and the first men just sort of found them and claimed them as their own. And we can actually back this up by looking beyond Westeros. Which brings us to Section 3, the oily black stone, a global anomaly. Across the entire known world, we find these identical structures made of a mysterious, magical, oily black stone that literally no current civilization can replicate. Just look at the global footprint of these sites. We have the Sea Stone Chair and the base of the High Tower over in Westeros. Way down south in the Basilisk Isles, we have the Isle of Toads. Deep in the deadly jungles of Sothoreos, there's the ruined, cursed city of Yin. And all the way out in the far, far east of Essos, you've got the shadow city of Asshai and the massive 5 forts. This global fingerprint tells us that a single, incredibly powerful empire once spanned the entire planet. So, who were they?
Section 4. Empire of the Dawn, Ancient Masters.
Theorists posit this was the great empire of the dawn. We're talking about a massive, highly advanced ancient empire stretching all the way from the Shivering Sea to the Jade Sea. Long, long before Valyria ever existed, this empire possessed the magical ability to fuse stone. They might have even mastered dragon riding in the Shadowlands. All those locations with the oily black stone we just talked about, those were very likely their global colonies. But, great empires often fall, usually due to their own hubris. The lore points heavily to the Bloodstone Emperor, a tyrannical ruler who usurped the throne, dabbled heavily in dark magic, and started the Church of Starry Wisdom, which was this bizarre religion worshipping a fallen meteorite. It's actually theorized that he tracked this specific meteorite all the way to Starfall in Westeros, which is where the famous pale sword, Dawn, was forged. Anyway, his relentless pursuit of deep blood magic and necromancy basically brought a terrible, world-ending darkness over the planet. And this next part is just brilliant. It shows how myths from complete opposite sides of the world are actually remembering the exact same history. We can clearly see this when we compare the Westerosi myth of the Ironborn's Grey King directly with the Associ myth of the Bloodstone Emperor. Check this out. The Grey King slew a sea dragon. The Emperor practiced dark blood magic. The Grey King sailed a ship made of human-eating yeggwood, which was almost certainly a weirwood tree. The Emperor was accused of cannibalism. The Grey King taunted the storm god for fire. The Emperor used sorcery to spontaneously generate fire. Finally, the Grey King's sea stone chair washed out to sea, while the Emperor was exiled by the Line of Night after a global cataclysm. It strongly suggests they are the exact same historical figure, just completely deformed by thousands of years of oral tradition. So how did this massive global superpower actually fall? Moving to Section 5, a post-apocalyptic world, the Long Night Cataclysm. The hubris of the Bloodstone Emperor and this ancient empire is what unleashed the Long Night. But here's the kicker. The Long Night wasn't just a harsh, localized winter in Westeros. No, it was a worldwide apocalypse. We are talking about a global cataclysm featuring epic battles in Dorne, at the massive 5 forts in Essos, and all the way out to the Thousand Isles. The theory suggests this magical disaster was so severe, it actually disrupted the planet's axial tilt, which totally explains the completely broken, unpredictable seasons they still experience today. The event utterly, completely erased their technological progress. This timeline outlines what fans call the multiple long nights paradigm. So 10,000 years ago, you have this incredibly advanced great empire of the dawn. Then around 8,500 years ago, the Bloodstone Emperor's betrayal triggers the apocalypse. 8,000 years ago, the long night cataclysm hits hard. The result? A complete technological reset. Humanity is forced to start over from absolute scratch in a post-apocalyptic dark age, armed with nothing but Bronze Age tools. All those impossible structures, the walls, Storm's End, the high tower base, they are just the glowing, irradiated ruins of a lost world. And because they've been stagnant for 8 millennia, they've completely forgotten their own history. It's like a giant puzzle they don't even know they're living inside of. Which leaves us with this final, genuinely terrifying thought to ponder as we look at the current story. As winter falls again and the others march south, are the people of Westeros actually fighting to save their world? Or are they just delaying its next inevitable cyclical reset? Will humanity finally break this 8,000-year cycle of apocalypse? Or are they about to be bumped back to the Stone Age all over again? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. And remember, always keep questioning the history you're told.